Where would you like to go today? Where would you like your books to take you? I have some recommendations for some fantastic places right here in the good old US of A that you can travel to via a book, a classic book, no less. Stick around. I'll share those recommendations with you. Welcome to my channel. My name is Anne, and today I have a recommendation of a few books that are set in the United States of America. Classic books. This is, of course, for my Reading the Classics Challenge, 1776 edition. All of these books are by American authors, and they go with the prompt for June, which is Land of the Free, Home of the Brave, and a book that is set in the United States of America. There are so many classic American novels that evoke a strong sense of place. The problem is, I haven't read a lot of them, at least not recently enough to recommend them to you. So I was honestly a little bit stumped on this video. But I do have a few. Some of them are obvious, but still, if you haven't read them yet, and I know there are people out there who haven't read them yet, this is a good time to read it. What are you waiting for? Some of them are not so obvious. One or two of them I may have mentioned before in previous recommendation videos. I tried to give different recommendations for each video of recommendations this year for the Reading the Classics Challenge, so that each month has a fresh set of books for you to try and to think about. But I do think there is one repeat on here, but it's really good, and it does have a strong sense of place, and not just one place. And it's just so well done. I couldn't resist including it in the list. But let me take a little sip from my Oregon coffee mug here. None of my books are set in Oregon, sadly. Let's go ahead and start with the one that I was just mentioning, the one that I couldn't resist adding to this list, even though I've mentioned it in previous months, and that is Evangeline by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. This book begins in Acadia, and then the characters travel throughout the early United States. They travel through Philadelphia, there's Louisiana, Michigan, out west, like they go everywhere, and everywhere is beautifully and eloquently described by the poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Such a strong sense of place, but of lots of places. Everywhere the characters go, he immerses you in that setting with the language of the poetry, and it's absolutely beautiful. The mental images that are created by the poetry are just vivid and lush, and I enjoyed that probably more than the actual story, which honestly was a bit of a tragic story, but it was very good. Now, this one is a good one to read also for the Red, White, and June readathon, which is another reason why I decided to go ahead and share it, even though, you know, I've already mentioned it before, because it's set in colonial times. It covers a long period of time. So I think it goes from probably before 1770 to after 1797, I want to say. I actually am not 100% sure with the time frame. So I can't guarantee that, but I do think that it would work for Red, White, and June. It definitely, so I was reading a little bit in the information in the back of the book. It definitely starts before the Revolution. It starts in 1755. That's where the beginning of the story. But if I'm not mistaken, it goes through multiple decades. So I think the end of the story is solidly in the Revolutionary era in Philadelphia. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not 100% convinced about that. But still, I think it would be an excellent read for June. So then another one, which is not set in the Revolutionary time, but I think that one of the stories could work well even so. And that is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Other Tales by Washington Irving. So Washington Irving was from upstate New York, and he wrote a lot of his stories in that setting. And it's just, well, first of all, the legend of Sleepy Hollow, like it's set in the town of Sleepy Hollow and those surrounding environs. And so is Rip Van Winkle. It's set in the same area, and he just evokes the setting very well, and you feel like you were there in that little town, small town, America, and just very well written stories. I have not read all the stories in this book, although I do want to. And Rip Van Winkle in particular would be a fun read, even though it doesn't strictly follow the timeline that we've set up for Red, White, and June. But the character, he supposedly falls asleep. And I believe when he falls asleep, it's before the revolution, and then he wakes up well after it. So that's interesting and a fun tie-in to Red, White, and June. So Sleepy Hollow, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Washington Irving. And then taking a very different direction. My next one is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Now, 4 weeks ago maybe, I would not have thought of putting this on a recommendations list. But I recently watched a video by The Second Story, and that is a channel that I follow and occasionally watch. I don't agree with everything that the host says on that channel, but I love how she is logical, and I love her rhetoric, her way of speaking and communicating. I love her passion for what she believes in strongly, and I love her conviction in that she speaks from. Even if I don't always agree with her, there's a lot that I do agree with her about, and she just speaks very boldly, and I just really appreciate that. So I occasionally will watch videos of hers that pique my interest, and she recently did a video about The Catcher in the Rye and how a lot of modern interpretation of this book gets it wrong. And I have to admit that my interpretation of the book as I read it was heavily influenced by other interpretations of it and my own reading into the text. And her interpretation actually, I think, is 100% more accurate than mine was at the time that I read it. So I highly recommend watching her video and getting her perspective on what J.D. Salinger is doing in this book, and read it then. But the reason I'm mentioning it as set in the USA is that it has a strong sense of place. Our character goes to New York City, and it's not a great deal of time. He spends a few days in New York City, but you really get a strong feel for what the city was like then. I think it was in the 50s. And I think obviously it's different now, but there were also some similarities. And he just experienced that city life for a few days. It very much has that modern-ish New York City feel to it. I say modern-ish, like more modern than, for example, Edith Wharton, who also set a lot of books in New York City in the Golden Age. That is more like old New York City. This is closer to what New York City we are familiar with. But anyway, strong sense of setting in place there. And I want to read this book again with fresh eyes and see if I can get a better idea of what J.D. Salinger is saying here. And also, I do want to warn you that there is definitely some language in this book. And also, like many other modern American authors, there's not a lot of hope offered. These are books that I find a lot of American authors are saying, hey, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem. But there's not often hope for solutions or ideas for solutions. It's just like, hey, this is a problem. And so this is one of those books. So just be aware of that. It's not necessarily a warm and fuzzy little book. Then we have Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. The writing in this one is just beautiful, gorgeous writing. That was my favorite thing again about it. I could just immerse myself in the beautiful writing that really sets you in the time and place and in the situation and let you feel like you are there. And just the turns of phrase that Zora Neale Hurston uses and just the evocative language that she uses, it's very unique to her. I've not read another writer who writes quite in the same style. And I loved it. Again, the story itself, I didn't love as much as the actual writing. The actual writing was beautiful. This one does have a bit more hope in it than some of the other modern American writers, so that's good. Although our character does go through a lot in the course of this story. There's a lot of tragedy and a lot of frustration and a lot of striving in the course of this story. But anyway, this is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, and the place is primarily in Florida. And there aren't a lot of books, classic books set in Florida, so I think that's really unique. And if you haven't read it yet, I do recommend it. I think every American should read it at least once and really just immerse yourself in the beautiful writing and the sense of place that it is in Florida. And June is a good time to do it. And then this one, I mean, this is an easy recommendation, guys. Probably a lot of you have read this, and that is Little House on the Prairie by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I mean, you can't get more American than this, and you can't get a stronger sense of place than this. Little House on the Prairie, the whole series is, some of the books are set in different places, and some of them are in South Dakota, and some of them are in Minnesota, and some of them are in Wisconsin. And each one has a very strong sense of the setting of where it's located. And you really get a feel for what it was like to live there at that time in that place. Laura Ingalls Wilder's descriptions are just breathtakingly beautiful. I love her descriptions of the weather, of the scenery, of the sky, of the feeling of the air. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, and the view of the sunset and the sounds that she hears. She's just really good at bringing all your senses into the story to really feel like you are there in that setting, in that place, wherever in the States it is, in the whole series. So I recommend any book in the series. If you haven't read it yet, pick it up and read it, and you will love the learning about the places where Laura Ingalls Wilder lived and the life she experienced in those places. And you also just enjoy the story and the family. If you haven't read it yet. If you haven't read it yet, start with this one. Like the series, okay? Forget the other ones I recommended. If you have not read any of the Little House books yet, pick it up in June. And finally, I have one last recommendation, and this is a book I just read. So I've been talking a lot about it recently on my channel, and it is great for June, for Red, White, and June. It fits perfectly. It does have not a strong sense of place, but it is set in Connecticut, in New England. And it has the setting of a small town not a small town even necessarily, but a town in New England with the hierarchy that exists there at that time in that early Revolutionary era. And it was just fascinating to read about. This is The Coquette by Hannah Webster Foster, and it is based on a true story. And it's set in the area where the story happened in Connecticut. And after reading this story, I just went on a rabbit trail of finding other similar books and similar stories to this one, many of which were also based on true stories of women who had been seduced or had been led astray, either of their own accord or by what is the word I'm looking for? Or by a male predator. I don't know how else to say it. Either at their own fault or otherwise. So these stories were very popular in the Revolutionary era, apparently. This one was printed in 1797, but the actual story took place in 1788. So it fits perfectly with Red, White, and June. It's a great one to read for that. It's short, not very long. It's epistolary, which I love. But there are a couple of others, and at the moment, I'm sorry, I forgot to look up the titles. I will put them in the description box. There are some others that I am actually strongly considering reading in June, for Red, White, and June. I've definitely added them to my potential TBR, and I have found them either on Amazon, Kindle, or on Gutenberg, the Gutenberg Project. So either way, I can get my hands on them and read them. I also, after reading this, there's a bit of a mystery surrounding this story. Not in the book. The book is not a mystery, but the actual woman, Elizabeth Whitman, that it's based on. There's a little bit of mystery about her life as to far as what really happened. This is one fictional imagination of what maybe happened, but a lot of people have tried to figure out exactly what happened. Like, who was the man involved, and did she marry him or not? And nobody really knows, but people have tried to find out. So I have read also, which are available online, some books that are related to that, like short books that have information that people have dug up and unearthed in the 200 and some years since this happened. So a little bit of a rabbit trail that I went down, but I found it very interesting. So if that sounds good to you, June is the perfect time to read this book. So I hope one of those recommendations will work for you in the month of June. If you have already chosen your book for June for this prompt, let me know in the comments what you plan to read. And if you have any recommendations for other people of classic novels set in the United States of America that have a strong sense of place. The book you choose doesn't have to have a strong sense of place, but I was trying to think of books that really, like, where the setting is kind of part of the story and the story couldn't be told if it weren't for the actual setting. And I can think of so many other books right now off the top of my head that would fit that qualification, but I haven't read them, or it's been years and years and years since I've read them, and I don't remember much about them, so I didn't want to put them as a recommendation. But anyway, I'm sure there are many other options, so let everybody know in the comments what your recommendations would be so that anybody watching this video can get some more recommendations and more ideas and just fill up their TBR. Let's fill up everybody's TBR. So I hope you enjoyed, and let me know what you're going to read, and I will see you next time.